times or maybe more, right? It just so happened that in that particular moment he did not. He was a bit too tense, and she was telling me, look, he has to flow a little bit more, and I was telling her, yes, I understand, but you've already done it. You've already won the world championship, so you know exactly what to do, but the first one is the most difficult one.
Wow, so and we see Magnus Carlsen, who was ready to probably again lose his game. He came 10 minutes late. just
He's just arrived.
he just arrived. Yes, you don't see the moves on the board.
How
Yes.
does this keep on happening?
I don't know. Yes, it's a good question. Yes, I was asked today if I'm late for the games, but I see that
eventually, Philidor, it began its life as a bit of a Pirates, and then very quickly Black plays e5. It no longer really is a Pirates at all. There is a number of ways to treat this, but knight of 3 is by far the most popular. Black goes knight b7, and Dragnev decides not to get involved with like the most fun move in this position. I think they even began playing g1 here, I think, which is a very serious move, shockingly. Saying, I do want g4, g5, I do not want to give up a pawn for it.
it's a pity. I mean, I would have played it, against Magnus, it could be a fun game, yes.
But bishop c4 is the way to play kind of normally, and then a2, a4 is a good move here because a little bit of a trick for those of our viewers who maybe have encountered this and want to a bit of a life hack. If you start with rook e1, I'm not saying it's life-changing, but it allows this line with a6 and b6. And if you start with a4, you will still be able to play rook e1 later, but after a6 you of course quite happily can play for a5 yourself. So I think players have begun starting with a4 here, maybe for that specific reason. Magnus goes c6, h3, h6, bishop e3, rook e8, a5. You're kind of cramped. With black you don't have currently a lot of breathing room for your pieces, but it will improve a bit if white doesn't find a way to play very forcefully. Bishop f8, queen c7. Black quite clearly wants to play either knight e5 or knight c5.
Grishuk behind Magnus, checking in on Magnus's game.
Yeah.
As usually, Magnus gets lots of attention in the playing hall.
It seems like a very playable position. Of course, white is going to be at least a little bit better because white has more space. Having a pawn on a5 is very useful because you exert a lot of pressure against the black queen side. I'm drawing arrows which might seem a bit ridiculous right now, but it actually makes it difficult to develop the rook on a8.
Pressure. Yeah.
You do have to somehow solve the issue of a5 controlling both a7 and b7.
Well, the thing is, you would love to play b5, but unfortunately you just simply don't have that option because you take b6.
You just do it straight. Yeah, you do not want to be doing this to your structure, even though the engine shockingly doesn't hate it as much. Apparently it was playable in the previous move for a very specific reason, because wherever the bishop goes, we can actually start immediately attacking the pawn on e4, and then we probably get to play d6, d5. Let's say if knight d2, we can push d5 and we're not much worse. But even if Magnus considered it, and I'm not sure he had, I think he dislikes the idea of simplification.
He doesn't want to exchange pieces, yes.
Yeah, he wants to have more pieces on the board. I mean, he doesn't
this game because of how far advanced that c-pawn is. It might end up on c2. Bishop f4 is coming in as well. White's queen is in the way of the a-pawn. It's a messy position, no question about it. Magnus now under 10 minutes as well. But I don't buy it. I think he's going to take this one.
I don't really see any threats from the white side. I know you want to get your a-pawn rolling, but as you noted, c2 here for black. You can push your pawn to the second rank, the 7th, from black's perspective, 1 square away from promotion. So that would be very tempting to me. Later, if the white queen stops being a pest, black can play queen e5 as well to go for the king side, a checkmate over there. So I do think that Magnus, he has a number of choices that will leave him with a healthy plus. And you can see Dragnev, he survived against Duda. Magnus, though, doesn't look like a player who wants to relinquish a half point.
Especially after he relinquished half a point against Parham Maksudlu in what seemed like it could have been an opening knockout, but Parham, he held his ground. I don't know if Valentin has another miracle save in him. Now, queen e5 is always very tempting, and an instructive point for newer players is not to get too enthralled with the prospect of a check on h2. If you play queen e5, you drop the bishop on e7, and what often happens is that the king evacuates through the center. So this series of checks is a lot less lethal than it appears. Magnus is taking his sweet time, and c2 is on the board. That pawn rumbles forward.
The easy move to play, right? Your pawn is 1 square away from getting a new queen. Bishop f4 in the future. It's not just about checkmate. The bishop can help protect the queening square. So I do think that Magnus, he has this one in his complete control because there's not much in the way of counter chances for white here. So it looks like this one remains interesting. The rest of Norway, they're cruising in this match. I guess board 3, that one, there's some tension remaining, but Johan Sebastian Christensen and Frode Urkedal doing well, and Norway needs a rebound because they lost to Iran. And speaking of Iran, it looks
Board 3 will be non-consequential.
A huge victory at the handshake.
Johan Sebastian also won. So
Yes.
the only live board is board 3, where I would guess black is maybe slightly worse, but it's not going to matter a great deal because, and there it is.
It's 3-0 right now.
Magnus
Team
winning
Norway.
his game.
Wow, dominating this match in Norway.
By the way,
Good news
an important
for-
bounce-back victory for Team Norway after a difficult loss against Iran, but still, they're back in this. They're back in this tournament right now, and they can beat anybody with Magnus.